Okay, so today's lesson is all about operations with trigonometry. And more specifically is how do we evaluate a trig function when we're given the x value, when we're given the angle. So if I was to ask you to find the sine of pi over 4, or 2 times the sine of pi over 4, or as you see in C here, cosine of 3 times pi over 4, what exactly are the steps that you take and what's the order? Now, if you think back in the elementary days, you learned an order of operations. You learned to do parentheses, then exponents, then to multiply and divide, working, of course, left to right, and then to add or subtract, again, left to right. So that was our PEMDAS, or please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, whatever method it was that the teacher gave you to remember that order. That was the idea, that you do what's inside parentheses first, then you do exponents, then you multiply or divide, then you add or subtract. Well, there's another dimension when you throw in a trig function into this mess. And I think the best rule of thumb is to think work inside out. You're going to focus on the inside like a target. What's next to the x? Then work to the trig function, and then work outside of that trig function. And you'll follow what I mean as I do some of these examples. So if we had x equals pi over 4, what this would basically say is that in place of x, I'm going to put pi over 4. So probably no surprise, this is asking you to do the sine of pi over 4. Now, hopefully right now you're thinking already, hey, I know that chart. I need to get that chart up there. So I'm going to quickly put that chart up here for you. Ta-da! And so I can quickly evaluate what the sine of pi over 4 is. And we can see over there we have root 2 over 2. Easy enough. All right, if I have 2 times the sine of pi over 4, change my color here so we can keep this separate. So 2 times the sine of pi over 4. Again, think inside out. And look right next to that angle, there's nothing to do there. Then I move out sine of pi over 4. Well, again, that is root 2 over 2. So what I'm going to do is 2 times root 2 over 2, and of course the answer to that is the square root of 2. In C, then, we have cosine of 3 times x, or cosine of 3 times pi over 4. Again, think inside out. So next to the angle, we have the 3. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by that 3. So that would be 3 pi over 4. So the real question that we're asking here is, what is cosine of 3 pi over 4? And so we know that cosine of pi over 4 is root 2 over 2. And then we think, okay, that 3 tells me that we're in the second quadrant. And if you don't know why it's in the second quadrant, you may want to take a step back and look at that table in quadrants video. But it is in the second quadrant, and we know that in the second quadrant, just real quick, all students take calculus, cosine is in fact negative. So the answer to C is negative root 2 over 2. All right, let's keep moving on. Let's do E. E says cosine squared of pi over 4. Now, before I move too much farther, I want you to understand that I know the squared here tends to mess people up. Understand that when we write a trig function, that's really the shorthand way of saying this is the cosine of pi over 4, and then we square it. See, it's squaring the function. It's not squaring the angle. This is not the same thing as the cosine of x squared. That is different. Once the parentheses, that is the same thing as what you see in E. So just as a clarification, it means that we are going to square the answer. So we're going to do cosine of pi over 4 first. Cosine of that first, which is root 2 over 2, and then we will square it. And so we would get 2 over 4, or rather 1/2. And that's how you would do that. Now, what if, and I don't have this example down here, but let's just say I make up this monstrous one here. Let's say I have 3 sine squared of, let's say 2x. Okay, so what that would basically mean, again, our x is pi over 4. So we would do 3 sine, and I'm going to write it like this, 2 times your pi over 4, and understanding that what that means is I'm squaring. Notice the square did not go to the 3, it goes to the function. Okay, so this is really the 3 times the sine of pi over 2. squared. And so back to our question, we want to know what's the sine of pi over 2. If you don't know, that means we need to refer back to our graph of the sine curve. And pi over 2, we know, is right there at 1. So we say that's, okay, 3, and that would be 1 squared. And, of course, 1 squared is still 1. And so my answer to that would have been 3. So the key, again, is to work inside out. You're going to work next. First, we multiply the angle. Then we do the trig function. Then we square it, because, again, that was outside. And then we did the multiplication inside out. Inside out.